Thank you very much for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. I am Heena Gambhir. At 8 p.m. tonight, our focus is a new emerging political playground called education. In several Indian states, education is becoming a new flashpoint between centre and states. The latest Hijab row in Karnataka indicates the penetration of politics right inside the classroom. We are saying this because the Stalin government in Tamil Nadu has raised the banner of revolt against education policies bred in central government stables. It has formed a 13-member panel to frame its own education policy. Constitution of this panel is quite interesting. There is a middle school headmaster, a former vice chancellor, a mathematician, a chess champion, a musician, a writer, and members of the planning commission. The eclectic panel is expected to give its recommendations within a year. The brief to the panel by Tamil Nadu government is: keep the following three things in mind. 1. Historical legacy. 2. Present situation. And 3. Future aspirations of the state of Tamil Nadu. M.K. Stalin had promised this during 2021-22 state budget. Now, Tamil Nadu's upcoming education policy is pitted against Centre's national education policy. National education policy proposes 3-language policy. Tamil Nadu is against it. Stalin government feels this tantamounts to imposition of Hindi. So he seems to be building a Tamil pride narrative through this opposition. Tamil Nadu currently follows a 2-language policy. Prime Minister Modi has called the new education policy futuristic and as per global standards, but DMK calls it regressive. As per DMK, it meddles with the federal structure and the aim is to push RSS agenda. As per DMK, the new education policy denies education to poor and oppressed. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has also written to Prime Minister Modi indicating CUET is not cute. He has requested the Prime Minister to withdraw the Common University Entrance Test for admissions in all central universities. A move that centre feels is actually progressive. Now, it's yet another instance of breakdown in centre-state federal relationship. So let's try and find answers to a series of complex questions on Tamil Nadu's education versus centre's education. Is there merit in points being raised by the DMK? Since education is in the concurrent list, not in union list, can centre lay absolute rules for education via its national education policy? If states start getting their own policies, then why should there be a national education policy at all? So let's educate ourselves on Urban Debate at 8 p.m. tonight. Joining us on the broadcast this evening is Narayanan, Tirupathi, spokesperson of the BJP. We have Lakshmi Ramachandran, spokesperson of the Congress Party, joining us. Furqan Kamar, who is former advisor Education Planning Commission of India. Meeta Sengupta, Education Strategy and Policy Advisor. Professor Kapil Kumar, educationist, also joining us on the broadcast this evening. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Now, I want to begin the discussion with you, Mr. Furqan Kamar. The question that is being asked tonight is there merit in the points that have been raised by the DMK as far as the national education policy is concerned? The reasons that are being given by DMK to form a 13-member panel to have its own, Tamil Nadu's own state education policy.
Thank you, Heena, for having me in this program. You see, it will be sad if every state starts talking about having its own policy. But I think this is an occasion where we need to give a very serious thought as to why it's happening. The Education Policy 2020 was approved by Cabinet. Ideally, it should have at least gone for discussion in the Central Advisory Board of Education, which is chaired by the Education Minister, which has representatives of all state governments, represented by the Minister of Education, some experts. So those could have been taken into confidence. Unfortunately, for the final policy draft, it did not happen. There has also been no discussion in the parliament or any such forum where there could have been a consultative process. So these are the reasons which are making some states disquieted about the way the policy has been brought in. It is true that education was in the state subject, but that was a long time ago. Now all sectors of education, including school educations, are in the concurrent list. It's a shared responsibility of the union and the state government. Both the union and the state governments are empowered to pass legislations on matters relating to education, and therefore states play a very, very important role. I think we should realize that this highest level of advisory body and the consultative body, which was conceptualized even during the British time, it was established in 1920, was discontinued for some time, but was revived in 1935 and has since been working. And I think essential purpose of that is to take everybody's concerns on board, to satisfy, to convince, to address the issues and the grievances that people have. And I think although the DMK and the West Bengal government had said long time ago that they don't agree with many provision and the way the policy had come, but I think the way the policy is being implemented in a selective manner, and the way certain things are being interpreted in the policy. For example, the CUCET, which you referred, about two different pieces. I mean, the national education policy says that the NTA may conduct or would conduct this test. It would be a common approach, but then it will be with due regard to the autonomy of the university. Each university would be, or it is up to every individual university to decide whether to be part of the university or not. But the way it was brought in, even for central universities, and later on the impression was given that this is the first step for moving towards one nation, one examination, I think makes some people quite uncomfortable with these kinds of approach. So I'm not surprised by this, but I think that it would be sad if it happened. I think still there is a time to start the consultation process, taking everybody into confidence and addressing their concerns. Okay.
Okay, interesting points you have raised. One clearly about how it is being implemented, how it is being interpreted by states. Is that the reason why states are now thinking of having their own education policies? And another point that you raised was about that, there were probably not enough discussions or consultations that took place before Centre finalized this national education policy. Mr. Narayan Tirupathi, is this the reason why Tamil Nadu government today has decided to form a 13-member panel to have its own state's education policy?
No, see, first of all, we have to understand that the DMK has appointed this committee, wherein this committee, the members of this committee are almost, they are against the new education policy and also the NEET examination. So we need to understand that it's fully it is silly politics. That is what the DMK is trying to do as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned. See, actually the national education policy does not say what to teach. It really says how to teach. That we have to understand this concept. The main thing is that how we have to groom our youngsters, how we have to groom our students, children. That is what the national education policy says. And the stakeholders have been consulted for a very long time. So many objections were raised, and it is done in a very democratic way. And as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, what they say is that it will affect the Tamil Nadu government students. How it will affect the Tamil Nadu government students, particularly the government school students? How will it will affect? Now, I am asking you a very straight question. The DMK has to, or the Congress, because DMK is not there, they have to explain me, particularly Lakshmi has to explain why the Tamil Nadu government school students are performing very poorly. If that is the case, they say that because of NEET, the Tamil Nadu government students are not able to get into the medical colleges, or they are not going to the higher education. Why? Because of the very poor quality of teaching. Why there is poor quality of teaching? The teachers are not up to the expected standards. But whereas in private schools, the teachers earn a very lesser amount as salary. Whereas in the government schools, the salary is almost doubled or even tripled. But the quality of teaching is very bad. We need to understand this. This is the main problem. So the government has to concentrate how to correct these mistakes and how to stop the corruption in education in Tamil Nadu. We have to understand that in Tamil Nadu, these politicians for the last 40 years, almost for the last 40 years, they have started engineering colleges, they have minted money. More number of private medical colleges are in Tamil Nadu. That is the reason. And as far as school is concerned, there are more number of, when it was 100 during 2007 or 8, it is now more than 1,000 CBSE schools. Who gave no objection certificate? The same government of Tamil Nadu gave the no objection certificates for CBSE schools. So it is more or less a business for these people, and that is why they are trying to oppose the central government for everything. See, opposing central government for everything. This is because of the corruption. They don't want to stop the corruption happening in education sector. They want private colleges, private schools to be in their control, and that is because it is a milking business, the schools and colleges. So that is the reason they are trying to oppose. But as far as this committee is concerned, definitely the members in this committee has got a track record of opposing everything, what the central government says. So I don't think it's not a big surprise that this government has done. But
so it's pure politics as far as BJP is concerned. 100%. This is what Mr. Narayan Tirupathi has to say. Let's get Congress spokesperson Lakshmi Ramachandran to respond to what Mr. Narayan Tirupathi said earlier, and also the points that were highlighted by Mr. Furqan.
Good evening. As you mentioned earlier, the committee consists of some experts from various fields. You have Vishwanathan Anand, you have T.M. Krishna, you have people like Mr. Madasamy, who is a writer, you have Aruna, who is a educationist, who has been working with children from underprivileged background for many, many years. You have such experts. Now, you must understand that India is a large country, and it is a diverse country. So this one-size-fits-all policy of the central government is not going to work. As our population increases, as we have more institutions, schools, universities, colleges, the central government, the union government should be ready to devolve power, decision-making authority to elected state governments. In fact, this willingness to devolve power, delegate itself is a sign of growth. They are not ready to do that. They want to control everything from Delhi. Tamil Nadu has been demanding that the education be shifted from the concurrent list to the state list. The union government should be, more concerned about things like defense, guarding our territory, coming up with financial policies to regulate our financial market, banks. They should be worried about foreign policy, foreign trade. Things like healthcare and education are better managed if they are left to the states. I think our country, after 75 years of independence, has certainly gained expertise, has developed capabilities to do these things at the state level. I don't know why the center should be controlling everything from Delhi. You should understand that Tamil Nadu has one of the highest gross enrollment ratio when it comes to college education. It is 51.4%. It is not, Mr. Narayan Tirupathi is misleading the country. He's, demeaning our education system. We have one of the highest GER ratios in the country, double the national average, which means that they want to now by centralizing this admissions into admissions for university
Right.
university entrance exam, what they're trying to do is they are trying to usurp the opportunity of our students. Our students have gone through their education in the state syllabus. Now, this one education, one entrance exam, which is going to be, written by all students across India, is going to be based on the NCRT system. This is only going to cause mushrooming of coaching centers, and this will put our rural students, our students from poor economic background at a disadvantage. They will not be able to afford coaching classes. So again,
that is one point that has been repeated by various leaders of DMK as well, what Lakshmi is talking about. And two other points you've raised, Lakshmi. One, you believe that one-size-fits-all approach is not going to work as far as education is concerned. You also feel that states are better equipped to handle education. Mr. Narayan Tirupati, 1 second. I know you want to respond, but before that, let me also take the opening comments from my other guests who've been waiting patiently. Professor Kapil Kumar, I want to come to you. The main argument of the DMK as far as this national education policy is concerned has been that the policy is for elites and the education will be confined to and limited to a few sections only. How do you respond to this kind of an argument? Is there merit in points being raised by the DMK against the national education policy?
You see, I was listening to your previous expert, and she is making a statement that the students are poor and how can they afford that online or all these things. And at the same time, the amount of privatization of education and throwing the education system to the private sector in Tamil Nadu at high prices. Tell me one thing.
Across to Meeta Sengupta, Education Strategy and Policy Advisor, also joining us on the broadcast. Amita, you heard the views of other guests. All sides here have spoken. Where do you stand? Do you see merit in the points being raised by the DMK against the national education policy? Okay, there is some technical glitch out there that we are facing. We'll try and reconnect with Meeta as well in just a bit. But Narayan Tirupati, you wanted to respond to the points that have been made by Lakshmi Ramachandran of the Congress party.
So, first of all, I want to say, my Congress friend, that India is one. So, there is nothing wrong in having a policy countrywide because, it is totally, the education has become international. Now we need to understand this education policy was framed in the year 1986 when Congress was in power. And it was modified in 1992 again when it was Congress in power. The NEET entrance examinations came during the Congress rule. It was Mr. Kapil Sibal who had very strongly recommended entrance examinations for the entire professional courses. So first of all, if Ms. Lakshmi says that she is condemning the BJP, then I think she has to condemn the Congress government and apologize for what their government did. It is not, see, I don't say she is wrong or right. The thing is that by just to blame BJP and just because they are in the camp of DMK alliance, I think, the argument what she says is really not worthy. I am sorry to say this. But the thing is that as my previous panelist rightly said, we have thrown the entire thing to the private medical colleges owned by politicians in Tamil Nadu. Once again, I am telling you, the education is not up to the level. The syllabus is not up to the level. The students are definitely, maybe, as he rightly said, the national average is lower than what the Tamil Nadu has. Yes, that's what I said. There are more number of graduates, but they don't go to the work for what they read. That is the problem. We have to change that. We have to change the method of teaching. That's what we are saying.
Okay. Okay, Professor Kapil Kumar is back with us on the broadcast. Professor Kapil Kumar, you were making an important point. Please go ahead.
You see, what I mean to say is that why politicize the education issue? Do these people understand the basic problems which are having in the education system? Right since this new education policy, since 86 and all, what we do is we pick up the foreign models and we impose them on the Indian situations without even doing the environmental scanning that whether these models will be fit there or not. That objective type question, stop thinking of the students. Cram and answer A is correct or B or correct or C or correct. Spoil the Indian child's mind right from beginning. The other issue here is when they fight with the center, you can't change physics, you can't change algebra, geometry, mathematics. The only problem comes down to is social sciences, where the politics takes part. And there, even in the concurrent list, every state has its right to teach to its students its cultural history, its traditions, its other local, whatever aspects are there. So where is the problem with the national policy? Does the national policy say that you don't teach what is the Tamil Nadu culture? Do they say they don't you teach Tamil Nadu history? Don't they say that you teach Tamil Nadu festivals or Tamil Nadu society or what are the social conditions or economic conditions in Tamil Nadu? So where is the contradiction in this with the center? The problem is this, they want to politicize and for everything they think at their own cost of politics, they will harm the students. If a student from Tamil Nadu, you teach, I tell you this happened in Punjab, I tell you. For a long time in history departments, they made Punjabi history compulsory for Punjab students. Now what will happen when these students will go out for jobs to other universities? They will say we need a specialization in modern Indian history, ancient Indian history. And they say we have specialized in Punjab history. And you ban the jobs for those students getting jobs in other universities. These people should have a think tank to understand the basic problems of education. And education has to be linked. It is not a breaking point. It is a unifying point for the country. It is not to break the country, to the politics of these politicians.
So politics clearly should be kept out as far as education in the country is concerned. Important point you've made. Yes, let me now go across to Meeta Sen Gupta as well. Meeta Sen Gupta, let me ask you the same question that I asked my guest earlier. Is there merit, in your view, in the points that are being raised by the DMK against the national education policy? The reason why Tamil Nadu wants to come out with its own education policy specific to the state of Tamil Nadu?
I think framing it as against the national education
Meeta Sen Gupta.
Yes, I think framing it as against the national education policy is the most damaging thing possible that you can do to education. What we want here is a constructive approach. I do not think anybody should be against having a state education policy, a district education policy. In fact, even every school should have their own education policy, curriculum policy. They should know why they're doing what they're doing, and they should align all the way to the national education policy. Everyone, every state, every school has a right to say, this is the best way we will serve our students. And I think the student-first approach, the constructive approach over here would be to say, let us see what is the best thing to do for our students. The problem here and the controversy here has started because of the CUET, which seems to have been made compulsory. The national education policy said it would be voluntary. As Furkan Kamar Sahab said, that it seems to have been implemented in a way that seems to force centralization. It does not force centralization. But we do have a problem because across different states, we do not understand the differential in the quality of education. What does the score of 100% or 95% in a state board X mean? What does the same 95% mean in the central board? For that, we need to have a statistical spine, which means we need to have the same students taking some of them, not all of them. Some of them, at least 30-35%, statisticians will tell you what the right number is. And so that we can compare, that is how we can identify which state needs more help in quality improvement for our students, which state is doing well and can showcase what they're doing so very well. Kapilji talked about the Indian way of doing things, don't bring the foreign way. Then how do we identify what quality education is and which states are doing it right so that they can share their learning with other states? From a purely education point of view, this having both a proliferation of policies and multiple chances for students to excel, neither of this is a bad thing. I find the politicization of this, I don't understand politics, I find the politicization of this a waste of time. They can play their own games. As far as I'm concerned,
but do you think, Meeta Sen Gupta and Professor Kapil Kumar, this question is for both of you. Do you think what Mr. Furqan said earlier, that maybe because there was no discussion, no proper consultation as far as this entire process is concerned, the way it is being implemented, the way it is being interpreted is what we need to also focus on? So do you think perhaps it should have been, there should have been some sort of discussion between center and states? They should have come together on a table. For example, we have something like a GST council. Did we require something like that for better implementation, for smoother implementation? Meeta first, then Professor Kapil Kumar.
Firstly, this new education policy possibly has had the largest consultation all the way down to village teachers. And this has been a 4-year, 5-year process. Professor Kamar was very precise in saying that
then
only
what is the reason behind this opposition today?
No, he was very precise in saying that only the last draft.
Then what is the reason behind this opposition?
The voice of an entire state has been dismissed, has not been heard. Then what kind of a consultation is this?
Who said?
So my perspective on this is clearly there has to be an alignment process. I went all the way down to school policies, district policies, state policies. This clearly means that you need to have some sort of an alignment process. The CUET is the statistical part of the alignment process in place, the first step. Making it compulsory, making people feel that they are not heard might not be in the best interests of alignment. But I'm sure Furqan Kamar Sahab would also have a lot more to add to this.
Can I speak?
Okay, I'll get him to respond, but before that, Professor Kapil Kumar. Lakshmi, 1 second. Professor Kapil Kumar, then you, and then Mr. Furqan.
You see, I have my own criticism of the new education policy. And certain things what I want, which are missing there. Like I talked of a collaborative system. Okay, Bombay University physics theory is very good. And Pune University physics practical is very good. Let us allow them to have joint degree. Let us there be exchange of student and faculty. These kind of freedoms which should exist in the system. Then people talk of, student oriented. What does it mean? Now today, for example, a Ukraine crisis is taking place. Students will love to have a course on Ukraine, to know the history, to know the conditions. That is on demand courses, you see. That we don't adopt, that we don't want to go into. And certain perspectives, and you see, I am not against foreign models. What I said was that foreign models are implemented here without doing environmental screening, that whether those models are useful to us or not, or whether they need any modification. We just impose them rather than adapt them as per our needs. And this kind of problem with state and thing, you see what happened in Rajasthan. A whole debate emerged whether Maharana Pratap is great or not. Akbar will be rated great. Akbar, Maharana Pratap greatness was removed. Now, are these issues to be fought like this? Why can't there be people can sit on table and discuss it across? Let the Tamil Nadu government say, we have these
Lakshmi
problems
Ramachandran, will a structure like GST Council be helpful?
Certainly.
In education as well, across the country?
Before that, I want to express my objections to what Mr. Narayanan said, the way he portrayed Tamil Nadu's education system and also our students. You must remember that Tamil Nadu is one of the most developed states with one of the highest GDPs in the country, generating millions of jobs. We have people from all over India coming and working here.
I get your point, Lakshmi. You made this point earlier also. But how will you like to respond to the question that I asked? Let's talk about solutions now. If the problem is with implementation and interpretation, Lakshmi, if the problem is with implementation and interpretation of the policy, will something like a GST council that we have for GST work in education? bringing representatives from all the states and the center on one table.
Congress implements, it's fine.
You should let me make my point.
Okay, one at a time, one at a time. Lakshmi, only Lakshmi right now.
Lakshmi has to answer this. Why they need to say that the government school students are bad?
Many.
One at a time, please. One at a time.
We have many private colleges which are ranked very highly across the country. We have students from all over the country coming and studying in private colleges here, and painting all the institution with a single brush and calling them all corrupt is not right. Who is our students are employed in some of the biggest countries.
Okay, Mr. Tirupati, please respond very quickly, and I request let's not make it political. Let's talk about some interesting solutions here on the show, because we've got good guests joining us today.
I have made it
from both sides. It shouldn't be made from both sides. When he is accusing our party of making education political, and I can accuse him of.
Please respond, Narayan Tirupati, to what Lakshmi is talking about. Please respond, Narayan Tirupati, very quickly.
I have made it very clear that the DMK and the Congress, they have been saying that this new education policy will deteriorate the education system in Tamil Nadu, that is the state board schools. The state board schools are even the government-run schools. My question is, why government-run school students are not performing well, in spite of a huge salary given by the government? Wait, Lakshmi.
Do you know the socio-economic background these students come from? What about the rest of the country?
No. You are wrong. You are wrong.
You have teachers attending schools in the UP.
Children are equal. No. You are trying to degrade students. All students are equal. Only the way you give education is different.
I am not degrading. You are degrading the entire state.
The quality of education.
Let me speak.
This is not fair.
Okay. Both of you now, please calm down. Both of you, please calm down. Let's talk about something which is very, very important. It is the education for the students of the country that we are talking about, for the future of our country. Let's come back to the main issue that we are discussing here. Like I said, let's keep politics aside. Let's talk about solutions now. Furkan Kamar, you heard the other sides as well. Now, as I was asking earlier, do you think if indeed the problem is with implementation and interpretation, something like a GST council will work if the representatives of states are together along with representatives from the center, and they then together look at implementing the national education policy? Because if states start getting their own policies, then this national education policy will be of no use.
No, I think I would agree with many points which the Congress spokesperson made, which BJP spokesperson made, but I would also disagree with many of the points. I very clearly said that the final draft of the policy never went for discussion to Central Advisory Board on Education. This may not be very precisely like the GST Council, but it is represented by the ministers of education from all state governments. Then this will not serve the purpose. India is too big, too diverse, too large, that we need to respect this diversity. Let me give you a very concrete example. You see, the NEP was imposed on the whole nation. I will not go into the debate that who initiated the process, Congress or BJP, but the NEP was imposed. Now the people from the CBSE board, private and public both taken together, almost 76% of them qualify the NEET examination. Compared to that, there are boards, including like Maharashtra boards and including like Tamil Nadu board, where the qualification rate is only 45% or 52% in Tamil Nadu. Now you use this data to say that, okay, the Tamil Nadu and the Maharashtra's education is bad, but the difference is that they are not exactly following the CBSE curricula. Should every state follow CBSE curricula? I would say that no. there is an educational qualification and curricular framework that provides a guidelines for the state governments. Imagine a situation that if all doctors who qualify their medicine profession and become doctors in Tamil Nadu and they don't know Tamil language, so how would they be able to treat a patient? This is one of the counter arguments that they want to give. So we need to understand and respect the diversity. That is one of the essential conditions for the success and implementation of the policy. Another point, it is true that this policy over a period of 4 or 5 years went through a number of iteration, consultation, discussions from the village level to the highest level. But we do not have anything available on record to show that what were the points raised by people and how were those issues resolved, or how were the people who raised these points were tried to be convinced or taken on board. No record is available. So as an educationist, I don't want to be trapped into this BJP versus Congress debate. As an educationist, I would say that there is no record available. And in fact, what has happened is that you could come up and give in the policy something which you could have easily attained through a consultative process. In fact, there has also been a problem. The way, we have tried to implement the policy the other way around. In the policy itself, there is a provision of a consultative mechanism, both in higher education and school education. There is a GST council kind of thing has been installed in the policy under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister. Had we brought in those reforms first, so that the consultation process could have begun and we could have taken the rest of the decisions later, then perhaps things would have been much more simpler. Of course, there could not be any answer to any question where some people would say that, okay, I will not agree at all. This is not an argument. The argument is educational. Respect diversity. Take into account the concerns of all state government. Merely because only 52% students who appear in NEET examination qualify the NEET from Tamil Nadu, this may not be a genuine argument to say that Tamil Nadu school board is bad. It's simply that they don't follow the CBSE curriculum. Now, remember, final point I'll say, that CBSE accounts for only 10% of the total school leaving examination. Out of about 1 crore students who pass out, about 10 lakhs are from the CBSE.
Right.
The rest are from 38 boards. We cannot argue in our country that, okay, you have only one board and that is the CBSE board or the central board. I think state boards have their own importance. They need to be strengthened. If the result conditions are bad, this could also be because of the differences in evaluation. I think we need to bring in some kind of compatibility in the evaluation process. But like too much formalization, too much homogenization, neither improves quality, rather it brings down the quality to the lowest common denominator. So we should understand and respect this. Thank you.
Professor Kapil Kumar also wanted to respond.
You see, the problem here is that education policy is left in the hands of bureaucrats or in the hands of such experts. Someone may be a great scholar, a great professor, but you put him in a committee to make a curriculum for the primary schools, which he has not seen for the last 40 years. He don't understand what the student of today demands in class in the school. And we want to impose everything on the students. Tell me, in this country, has Tamil Nadu done or any state done the survey what the students want, what the students are asking for, what the students are looking for? Rather, we only are throwing the education system and our brains to the private sector. And I'm sorry to say that the highest number of capitation we charged for professional courses is in Tamil Nadu. I was the president of FedCuta. Professor Furkan knows this. I have fought these things for 20 years in my life. Education system has been ruined.
I want to give the last word now to Meeta Sen Gupta.
Then the center can make
picking
all
up from the
policies
point
of
that
education.
Professor...
But if other party makes, then all the stop politicizing.
Picking up from the point that Professor Kapil Kumar has raised, then Isn't it interesting? The 13-member panel that Tamil Nadu government has constituted, it has got a former world chess champion, it has got a musician. So this interesting
Very good.
mix
They
of
will make the
people
education
who
policy.
are going to be a part of this panel. Do you think it is a step in the right direction if we really want to improve the education system?
You
How
see,
many of them
If we
understand
want to
the
improve
student
the
psyche?
education
Tell
system,
me.
it is always a
Kapilji.
good idea to bring in
Kapil-
excellence.
Okay,
And these
okay.
people
Kapilji.
represent
Professor Kumar,
excellence.
Professor Kumar, that question was for Meeta.
Tell me, how many among these committee members understand the student psyche? Have they gone through child psychology?
Okay.
Have they gone through student psychology? Musician, chess player, you bring a cricketer also, you
Well,
bring a hockey
there
player
are
also.
certain
you bring a
educationists
Bollywood
as
also,
well,
like
sir,
that.
in this particular committee. Okay, I want to give the last word now to Meeta Sengupta. Yes, go ahead, because we have a Tamil writer, a former chess world champion, a musician, educationists are there, headmaster of a government Panchayat Union middle school is a part of this panel too.
So I would like to make 2 points over here. One that includes Professor Kapil Kumar's point. One, that this panel represents excellence. This panel represents the best of the people they could find, and it shows the aspiration of the state to say that we want to aim for excellence. But these people cannot do it alone. They will have to speak to people who are on the ground. They will have to speak to child psychologists. They will have to speak to teachers. They will have to make sure that their information sources are actually authentic, usable. In fact, the very things that make any assessment valid, reliable, timely, usable, the rules of assessment will apply to building a very strong education perspective. Consider it a policy team, consider it a little think tank for the state, consider it whatever. The more excellent people participate and share their energy in the field of education, the better it is. I also think, if you permit me 1 second, this is a great time for us in the education space to have a discussion on the science of assessment, which is at the root of all this disparity that we are seeing. The science of assessment, we are excellent at the administration of assessment. But the science of designing questions, the science of designing assessments are all fields that in which we really need to invest going forward. So I think this provocation has been very good to start this discussion on the science of assessment. And if, having more think tanks, having more, in fact, funding for this kind of research, having availability of resources to even understand what we have. Furqan Khamar Sahib is absolutely right. What did we gain from the 5 years of consultation? All of this needs to be consolidated, both at the national level, state level, and I will continue to add even at the district level. We already have aspirational districts with special education design for them. That is already a district level education policy, if you think of it that way. There is no harm in putting quality resources in every form. I would say this is the future of India. This is where India will progress. Let us all put our best foot forward and try to do it together. Fighting over it is again a waste of time.
I think you summed it up pretty well. It is for the future of our country, and we really need to keep politics out of it. But we've got some great ideas during the debate today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now and being a part of this very, very interesting discussion for the future of our country. Thank you for joining us tonight. Heading into a very, very short break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side of this short break, we'll tell you what's happening in Mumbai. A case of XC variant, new coronavirus variant, has been reported. More details lined up for you. Stay with us.
Capture the light.